How's everybody doing? Well, I tell you, I got a little sick, a little under the weather, so I had to take time off to relax. I no longer have that cough, like I had before. I completely took care of it. Now I'm drinking plenty of water, and I've been put on notice by my doctors to drink more water, less martinis. So I'm going to adhere because I want to continue to be a positive example, but still be myself. So, if I'm going to play, I also have to relax and let my body catch up. So like that, I don't go into complications where then I'm not available. And God knows, because you all know I got a lot of work to do with the theater. And in a couple of weeks I'm going to be in Rome, so I don't have a lot of time. I don't got no time to be sick now, so I'm getting it together. We're going to finish my break in the series of compatibility and incompatibility of signs by going into part 4 of the sadomasochistic pathology. Again, the most complex and the darkest of all of the compatibility of our relationship dynamics. So I want to continue that and finish it so that I can go on with the other relationship dynamic types, which I think we still have one more to discuss, which is the self-sufficient. The self-sufficient. But the sadomasochist is extensive. It's extensive. It's a lot to cover. We're probably gonna have to do up to part 6 or 7 of it. So I'm not quite sure if I should proceed. Okay. Definitely. Oh yes, I'm getting another call. No calls at this time while I get this done, get this finished. So with the sadomasochistic pathology, we are looking at another set of circumstances that can cause we have to talk about the attraction. What attracts a sadomasochist? And there are usually 2 types, and then there's subtypes. Okay, and the sadomasochist is attracted to wounded souls. That's number 1. And there has to be a form of psychological healing or emotional repair that needs to take place with the person that's emotionally or spiritually or psychologically wounded. And they give off a vibration that these people are wounded. And like the predatory shark going in the sea, looking, moving his head, picking up the scent of this vibration that travel through the ocean, like the blood. That shark can, like I mentioned in part 3, detect from miles away. Okay, they will attract people that feel that they are insecure, people that are deeply insecure, and people that need validation and have been deprived of validation of the simplest things, something as simple as a hug or a kind gesture. These are the kinds of people that are rather fragmented, that the sadist or the sadomasochist attracts. Okay. Now, the other type of sadomasochist attraction that the sadomasochist will be attracted to is someone that has a silver tongue. Now, I've been told in the past, since I was young, that I had a silver tongue. And it must be true because I attracted a sadomasochist. 7 years of absolute terror. Oh, trust me, I'm my mother's child. I gave the motherfucker a battle. An Irish dude too. A battle. Which it could have taken, we could both be taken out as many times that the cops showed up at our brownstone in downtown Manhattan. Terrible. Everywhere I was, there he was. He would send his chauffeur and driver something to tag me and follow me to school or whatever. It was terrible. Stalkers, I have to deal with a stalker now. So 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 there are certain types of human beings or types of behaviors that we exude or that we give off. And sometimes we're not in psychological awareness of it. And that becomes then the ectoplasm that a predator will pick up. Now, the question becomes, what is the lesson to learn by attracting a sadomasochist into your life? What is the experience? Why go through this type of experience, which can be fatal? Oh, people have died all the time in sadomasochistic relationships of all kinds and types. Trust me, and it could be intentional or unintentional. It could be due to emotional trauma or psychological trauma. Both types of traumas will exude a different pathological anomaly exclusive to these types of emotional states and mental and psychological states as it is defined in clinical psychotherapy. I'm drinking cherry Coke. No, it ain't spiked. I'm on antibiotics. No. So if I cough like really bad, you don't hear my congestion anymore, right? I'm good. But it's still there. It's breaking it up. So, I'm allowing my body to heal. I'm a Virgo. And one thing about me and Virgos, we recover very, very quickly. We know what to do. So what attracts a sadomasochistic person? What's another type of victim? The silver tongue type. Now, what is it about the silver tongue? There are many silver tongue types of personalities. We like to call them subtypes. But there's always two main types of silver tongue. There's the silver tongue, and then the other one is the tongue of a devil. The silver tongue, or the one who has the gift of gab. Now, it just so happens that I have both. The silver tongue and the gift of gab. I'm a fundraiser. I raise money for a living, not just for my theater, but for other organizations. So I have to have that kind of silver tongue or gift of gab in order to get your money from your pocket and put it into the organizations. That takes verbal skill and certain manipulation and maneuvering, So me having had that always since childhood, and I think I get that from my father, the sadomasochist is attracted to people like that. Now you will say to yourself, what is it about them that the sadomasochist wants to do? Well, this is the thing. We have to kind of go into it a little bit about what the silver tongue personality entails and what he's all about. Okay, let's take out my notes here. The notes. So put them here so we can see it. It's one of the things is that this type knows how to present themselves. They know how to say the right things. They know what to say in order to hook the masochistic person. Okay? So, I tell you, the roles can interchange. So the silver tongue can be the victim, or he can be the perpetrator. But over time, they can switch roles. Because once a silver tongue person gets hold of what the masochist wants, and it happens through lots of trauma in between, and learning from the trauma, and then stepping back and analyzing and studying the person and their behaviors. It trains you, it forces you to become an amateur psychologist to understand the motives of these types of very toxic people. And they might not be toxic in their own right, but when it comes to an interpersonal relationship with another human being, they can be quite toxic. And understand that this can be overtly, or it can be very subtle, subliminal, intense, or to the extreme. It can come in all kinds of various degrees of intensity, and it can be very insidious. There was a movie by Stephen King. I don't know if I mentioned it in part 3, Dolores Claiborne by Stephen King. where the little girl thought that the mother was abusing the father, but in the end, it was really the father that was abusing the mother, but he did it in a way that the girl never took notice. The girl always took notice when the mother blew up and then fought against the father until the father died, and Dolores Claiborne was blamed for his murder. And then it happened again down the stories. But Stephen King, fascinating. But that right there is a sadomasochistic relationship. And she had to endure the pain of abuse, physical, and not break the image that her little girl had about her daddy. So therefore, she had to, until she had enough, and she killed the motherfucker. See? So a sadomasochistic relationship can start out very subliminally, very mildly, and then escalate out of control. Because there is never a break in the car of a sadomasochistic relationship. A sadomasochistic relationship. There are never breaks. These relationship dynamics usually escalate. They escalate and they reach a certain degree of escalation that two things can happen. A sudden separation or the death of one of the spouses. This is why this is one of the most darkest. But then again, the sadist or the masochist can be the silver tongue. And with his wonderful words, he'll hook the unsuspecting victim to his grip. And before you know it, bam! I fell into someone with a silver tongue. And then when I figured out what was happening, it was already 7 years later. But then I learned from that experience, and then I flipped the tables on the motherfucker. Then I became the sadist. It's either way, it's toxic. But, you have to give a run for your money when you meet these dangerous types to let them know, okay, I got hooked. Well, let me unhook myself from you. And then let me pull you down here into this water and be eaten by the piranha and see how you like that motherfucker. Because you have to be able to, once you wake up, but it catches you by surprise. Now, the question then happens or occurs that you then have to ask yourself, well, then why did the universe put me in such a position? Why did the universe allow me to fall in the grips, in the clutches of such a masochist? And that's always a tough call. That's always a tough question. What would be the answer to that? Well, you see, this is the part where it can really be uncomfortable to talk about. Because people that fall in relationship dynamics of this type, we have to ask ourselves a basic fundamental question. Does this dynamic exist within us? And have we acted this way towards somebody else? Whether we knew it consciously or not. Did we engage ourselves in a sadomasochistic relationship with someone who was unsuspecting and not as strong as we were, or were in a position to be in an equally giving relationship where it was not a relationship of inequality, but a relationship of equality? Now, I've got to say, I've been in relationships of inequality most of my life. I have, both men and women. And that always is the precursor for a sadomasochistic relationship dynamic to occur. Because one can take advantage of the other's weakness or lack, while only for a time. Because then once the person who's being victimized in this way wakes up and understands and learns and studies the tactics, because they have to, then it brings that person into a form of psychological awareness of what's going on. It allows him to think and self-reflect and then probably figure out why he's in this type of relationship dynamic. So to answer that question that I asked before, why will God put you in that kind of situation? And I think I mentioned that in part 2 or 3, is that the universe wants you to be aware of yourself and understand who you are and take inventory of who you are and understand what makes you tick. If you just walk in this planet just acting and reacting to stimuli with no inherent cause, just aimlessly drifting from one relationship to another with no inherent meaning, you are most likely to attract these types of people. Because these people usually have nothing at stake. They don't really invest in anybody else the same way that they invest in themselves. And that's all it takes for the masochist or the sadomasochist to hook you. He needs to see that kind of innocence and naivete and try to use it in a way that sustains and helps him and diminishes you. It's a parasitic relationship. But and all of them can be that way. But what makes it more unique in the sadomasochistic relationship dynamic is that the one who's being the victim of sadomasochism can become the sadist in the end and inflict that same pain back to that person at some point in the relationship cycle, or inflict that to somebody else. And if he does that, then that person has become traumatized by the experience. Okay. Let me switch to cue cards here. Okay. See, this type, typically, okay, they are so deeply insecure that they will create an idea or an image in their minds of who their image, of who their partner is, the masochistic partner is. See, this is what I talk about there, the honeymoon phase of a relationship. These things occur in that honeymoon phase, where the person paints pictures and projections of the person as he or she sees them. But this imagery didn't come to that person at random. The masochist set the tables and set the set for him to think that way. No, so he's not really seeing an illusion. The honeymoon phase is always an illusion, but this is a double false illusion that the masochist is creating. And it can happen if there's an inequality of age where the young person doesn't know any better, but it can also happen of equal age, especially if someone is a foreigner and not familiar with the customs of the country or culture. That's why it can take so many forms. And there has to be a level of vulnerability that you cannot be able to resolve on your own without the help of the abusive partner. And that's what makes the binding relationship of the masochist such a complex one, because then there is a level of codependency that is developed, where then the person who's victimized in this way feels that it's okay to go through this type of relationship, that it's a natural form of human relating, not knowing that it's extremely pathological and it is not a normal aspect of human relating. But then to prove that and to validate that is difficult in our Western society, because even in the church, we have a sadomasochistic relationship with God, which is very, very clear in our Bibles. So then how can we counsel someone in a way to avoid it when we are actually institutionalized to live and accept it and live within it? Beginning from the church down to government. That's the other one that carries the whip to shape society in order. That's another masochist. While the Pope and what the church represents is the other one with the other whip. So then what are we to do? We are going to learn to do the same thing that our master is doing to us. So then now we are going to do that to each other and do it in the worst way. So now the chain of sadomasochism develops a life of its own, coming from the top down. And this is why domestic violence in the 50s and 30s and God knows way back when, was never taken seriously. Because, it was, women were objects. They didn't even have rights. That right there was the perfect setup of sadomasochism between a man and a woman. If a man wasn't working or he was being down by society, because society was acting as the sadomasochist, then guess what? He's going to come home to his wife and beat her or mistreat her the same way he was mistreated by his boss or society. Because now he's going to pass the buck to the next person. And it's usually the spouse. And the sadomasochistic pathology can work in that way. Do you see now how subtle it can be and insidious? And then it can morph into something worse. Because once you bring that domesticity of violence to the home, triggered by something else that occurred outside the home, then it sends the other partner into a whirlwind of confusion and internalization of guilt, thinking that so now they feel that they deserve the abuse because they've done something wrong. Otherwise, the husband won't react this way. So now the sadomasochistic relationship pathology has been locked in. So we covered that. And now we're going to talk about, there's another type too. But once the masochistic person bites on the hook and makes the decision to be in a relationship with the person who's setting the bait, the actual emotional and psychological agenda or reality of the sadistic partner becomes revealed. And this occurred to me when, before I met the person, I was in a relationship with my own home, my own everything, my car, everything, never needing money from anybody. Still don't. Not from my partner today, in 10 years, And he was attracted to my self-sufficiency and sustainment. And it took 2 years for him to convince me to sell my place, give my place up, and move in with him. He had a huge place, which it is now. But once I got hooked in, the dynamics changed. Then it became heaven on. Then it became heaven on earth for the first 5 years. Then it became hell on earth, and then back to heaven again. So. Because most people don't survive that, but I'm very airy, so I was more than too happy to wield the sword and enter into a fight. But at the end of the day, it becomes psychologically exhausting, psychologically debilitating over time. Who wants to be in a relationship where there's constant fighting and constant matching of wills? This occurs with alpha people, and I'm an alpha man. So as an alpha man, I'm going to attract alpha women and alpha men as well. So if you're an alpha type, understand that the alpha type personality or the type A personality is also pretty much a sure candidate to run into a relationship of this type, a sadomasochistic relationship type. Him being the sadist or sadistic, or maybe being the masochist who later on becomes the sadist. So understand, again, I'm giving you an example of how many forms this can take, how many dynamics of interpersonal relating can take. This has to be understood because it's like a snake, a poisonous snake that slithers on the ground, and that snake can color itself according to match its surroundings, like an iguana does. Well, listen, they change their spots or they change the color of their skin to match their topography, their environment. Well, that is a perfect analogy to describe the masochist, the sadomasochist. He's that iguana or that leopard that changes the spot, or the fish that plays dead by taking all its organs out into the water and giving out a smell of rotten flesh. So like that, the predators don't think that it's alive and therefore it is rotting and it leaves. And once the predator leaves, the fish gathers its organs back in its belly and swims away. That's an example of a sadomasochist. It's an illusion that they cast, and they're diabolically brilliant at it. Brilliant! And that's how they hook you in. And once that occurs, the horror then begins. See, the silver-tongued devil, along, because now the gift of gab is a different dynamic altogether. But the silver-tongued, they will often adopt an air of great concern and sincerity and promise to change in order to rescue or resecure the relationship. And they're very fucking good. That can be better actors than me, let me tell you. Yeah, once it is resecured, they revert to the old patterns. It's emotional battery, you know? And of course, these two types that the masochist can attract can be combined in the same person. Like I said, I have the silver tongue, then the gift of gab. We ran out of time. We're gonna have to do a part 5. It should stop.